Hello, I'm here to speak about contemporary Mexican works for tuba and electronics. My name is Jeffrey Meyer, and I'm an assistant professor of music at Sul Ross State University. Thank you so much to the VTech ITEA staff and board for your generous support and inclusivity. Thank you to the ITEA membership for constantly inspiring me, and thank you for attending my session. Here's a little background information. My wife, Mary Elizabeth Thompson, received a Fulbright grant to study contemporary Mexican flute music in Mexico City in 2011. She subsequently published her research in the Flutist Quarterly. We lived abroad in Mexico for the academic year 2011 through 2012, primarily based in Mexico City. We also lived in Mexico City during the summer of 2013. And we kept a blog of our adventure, and so you can look up playing and eating flautas in Mexico.wordpress.com if you want to see a little more of a casual portrayal of the types of things that we did there. While living abroad, I was able to give many recitals, seminars, and premieres, and I collected quite a lot of new Mexican works. Here are covers of two programs that I was involved in. I played a solo recital at this International New Music Forum, Manuel Enriquez, in 2012 and 2013. We were able to meet so many talented Mexican composers, including Mario Lavista, Gabriela Ortiz, Alejandro Esquer, Marcelo Rodriguez, Ana Paula Santillan Alocer, Eduardo Gamboa, and Leonardo Corral, to name a few, and the three composers I will introduce today. The first new face is Felipe Perez Santiago, born in 1973. A little of his background includes he received a composition diploma from CIEM, the Center for Musical Research in Mexico City. My wife and I visited there. It's beautiful. It kind of reminds me of like a little liberal arts or Ivy League school that mainly has composers and academics and doesn't have much in the way of performance, but they do a lot of work with electronic music and with counterpoint and study. He received a Theory of Music diploma from the Royal School of Music in London and a diploma and a master's in electroacoustic music from the Rotterdam Conservatory in Holland. He has achieved many national and international awards and prizes, including a composition prize of the Kronos Quartet. Here is an album cover. He also has a platinum album. In 2014, he was considered one of the 7 most relevant artists in Mexico and the only musician in this category. In 2017, he was selected as one of the 3 artists for the Keep Walking Mexico campaign of Johnny Walker. And in 2019, he was considered one of the most successful Mexican artists to represent the Montejanic wine brand internationally. He has been a resident composer at the Center of Musical Creation Ioannis Xenakis in Paris, the Center for Electronic Music in Amsterdam, the Pompeu Fabra University in Barcelona, the Stats Theater in Munich, and the Studio for Electro-Instrumental Music in Amsterdam. Some groups that have performed his music include the Dutch Chamber Choir, Rotterdam Philharmonic String Quartet, Czech National Symphony Orchestra and Choir, Choir of Madrid, Percussion Quartet Tambuco, the Mexico City Philharmonic, and many more. He is the founder and artistic director of the Malak and Vortice ensembles, which are multidisciplinary formations that include musicians and artists of several nationalities and disciplines, combining chamber music with free jazz, rock, improvisation, multimedia, and a very strong element of electronic music. This album cover here, Nectar, I have the CD. I'm holding it in my hand right now. It is an amazing album. I would highly recommend you check out Malak. And I'm going to reference a film project called Animalak a little later in the presentation, well, maybe just in another slide. Also, my wife performed with Malak quite a few times while we were there, and they performed at drive-in movie theaters. This was before COVID, and they performed at this horror festival called Morbido, where they were all kind of dressed in gothic horror figures, and it was kind of theatrical rock electronic music. It's very, very cool. In 2013, his album Mantis, a compilation of his electroacoustic work, was released. This album was considered as one of the most important Mexican contemporary music albums of the year, and in 2018, he released with Nanova Records through Naxos his album Formica, a compilation of his chamber music with excellent international reviews. So now let's talk about this tuba piece, because we have this really innovative, famous, amazing Mexican composer, and he's written for tuba. This is Tuba Libre of 2014 for tuba and electronics. The composer states, "To play Tuba Libre is an exaggeration in every way, accelerated rhythms accompanied by hyperactive beats in the electronic part, and an acoustic writing of total virtuosity on the verge of frenzy that would leave most risky players without lungs, and with a degree of hyperventilation. 6 minutes of pure adrenaline make up this work of individual hysteria with hopes of becoming collective." The work was commissioned by and recorded by tubist Hector Alejandro Lopez y Lopez of the Ofunam Orchestra in Mexico City and faculty at the National Music School and Universidad Panamericana. And here is Hector. He's a wonderful guy. He's been in many master classes and studied with many people and won lots of awards. I've heard him play with the orchestra. He sounds fantastic. And he studied with Walter Hilgers, which I think is awesome. And he has this album, La Tuba Contemporaneana in Mexico, and it's wonderful. I am familiar with several of the works on that album. They're not all with electronics, so there are works, there's unaccompanied works as well. I can't recall if he did anything with piano. I think it's mostly unaccompanied and mixed media kinds of things. And he got a grant to do this, and it's an amazing resource, and it's online, and I highly recommend you check it out. And he has a wonderful recording of Tuba Libre. About this work, in my analysis, cursory analysis and observation, it is pop, rock, and industrial influenced. It almost reminds me of Nine Inch Nails or Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross. It has a lucha libre theme, so it's Tuba Libre. You might think free. It is not very free. It's very strict. It's more sounds more like a luchador's theme, and perhaps there was a little influence from a short film called Boot that Santiago scored with Animalac, and you can find that on his website. It's really neat, and it's about fighters and luchadors, and the piece is in 3/4 all the way through, albeit with some cross rhythm and hemiola, and that's possibly a reference to Mexican folkloric music being often a fusion of 3/4 and 6/8, as well as the importance of the tuba to Mexican folk and current popular music. And then it's modally centered around B, F sharp, and C sharp, and that key is clearly influenced by guitar and bass writing. So now I'm going to include a little bit of my performance. I will try to link in the description the complete performance, but there won't be time for me to include complete performances in this presentation, so I'm just going to cut in a short fragment that fits and cut back into the presentation, and then you're welcome to look at the complete performance. Thank you. The next composer I'm going to discuss is Rodrigo Sigal, born 1971. He's a composer, cultural manager, and full-time professor at NS UNAM Morelia, where he is also the coordinator for the Music and Artistic Technology undergraduate program. Sigal is interested in new technologies, especially in electroacoustic music. Since 2006, Sigal has been the director of the Mexican Center for Music and Sound Arts, or CEMAS, where he coordinates numerous initiatives of creation, education, research, and cultural management in relation to sound and music. I was fortunate enough to have a week-long residency at CEMAS, and I composed a few works there, and it's a wonderful, amazing place in Morelia, which is a really beautiful historic city. He earned a doctorate degree from the London City University and completed his postdoctoral studies at UNAM, and he has a diploma in cultural management as well. He is one of a growing number of musicians in Mexico who leave to get doctorates. In fact, they're now, I think the National Music School is now able to offer doctorates because there are so many faculty with doctorates. But at the time, a lot of these musicians and professors were encouraged and sometimes granted to, given scholarship to leave the country, get a doctoral degree with the promise or kind of understanding that they would come back and bring that knowledge and information and those credentials to Mexico. And so Sigal has made good on that, and he has taught and influenced many students. For 20 years, he has taken part in the Luminico project. He is the director of the Visiones Sonoras Festival and editor of Sonic Ideas Journal. And he has also recently published a book in English and Spanish on electroacoustic music. His most recent album, Be Blind, is a collection of his electroacoustic works. It's a wonderful album. And today's work, Bloodstream, was commissioned and recorded by tubist Jesus Cara. Bloodstream, composed in 2003, explores the possibilities of the tuba and its timbre in order to generate a stream of contrasting intensities. It tries to define the limits between the performer and the technological world. It tries to generate a context where everything is valid. This is from the composer. The tubist that recorded it and for which it was commissioned is very interested in sound installation and that kind of experiential electronic and electroacoustic music, and so this really features that, and it features extended techniques as well. Graphic notation, although the work is thoroughly composed and not improvised, though it sounds improvised. Techniques include sing and play, vocal glissandos, hand pop, slap tongue, air sounds, low undefined gestures, multiple short sound effects, fast uncontrolled short gestures, fast ascending gestures, and so forth, as well as just written out notation. And beyond the exploratory feel of the work, the solo part is notated at a tempo of quarter note equals 120 beats per second, which I've come to understand makes it easy for electroacoustic composers to link measures to clock time in a digital audio workstation working in multiples of 60. So now I will put a little excerpt of a performance of Bloodstream. The tubist that commissioned and recorded this work is from Spain, and I was fortunate enough in 2012 to give the Mexico premiere of Bloodstream, and there are certainly many wonderful and amazing tubists in Mexico and many Mexican tubists, but what I observed when I was there is that where maybe like 25, 30 years prior, the majority of the musicians and brass musicians would have been European and American, and but at this point they had really taught and trained Mexican musicians, but the Mexican musicians, for the most part, were really interested in playing traditional repertoire, and they were really mastering it and commanding it, and so there was still a gap into where composers were looking to get their music played and write new and exploratory music, but the really fine Mexican musicians that I met when I was there were really more interested in performing traditional music at a high level, and I was just really fortunate to be in that spot where I could fill in that role. And of course, I think that was very short-lived because, for example, in the last section we looked at that album by Hector Lopez y Lopez, and it's an amazing album of new work, of contemporary Mexican tuba works. So, and that was just produced a few years after I left. The last composer I want to speak about is Jorge Sosa. born 1976. He's a Mexican-born composer currently residing in New York. He works in a wide range of styles and media, covering everything from electronic music to opera, with an eclectic mix of styles and influences that converge to shape an original and personal voice. His music contains traces of folk and traditional music from around the globe, chant and polyphonic vocal repertoire, Afro-Latin rhythms, jazz harmonies, and electronic music. In his own words, my music is a juxtaposition of opposites that often attract, repel, or evolve organically. Noise and lyricism, harmony and dissonance, notated and improvised, acoustic and electronic coexist as part of a holistic vision of our musical landscape. Science, ecology, multiculturalism, spirituality, and social justice are recurring themes in many of my works. In recent years, he's focused largely on writing operas and for voice. In his first opera, La Reina, in 2016, he says, I explore the savagely violent world of drug trafficking through the eyes of a victim who evolves to become the victimizer. Violence only breeds more violence. And in I Am a Dreamer Who No Longer Dreams of 2019, I explore the complicated emotional relationships between immigrants as they struggle to find a place that they can call home, trapped between worlds that reject them for exploring their identities. Here's the cover to his album Plastic Time. My wife plays on one of the works. He says, I have a vast catalog of works involving electronics and media. My electronic works focus largely on the exploration of sound and often juxtapose elements and sounds from the physical world with extended techniques, lush harmonies, and expressive lyricism. My electronic works put forth a humanistic approach which seeks to transform the cold affect of computer music into a warm and introspective tool for expression. Improvisation and virtuosity play an important role in my electronic language. Many of my works stem from working with fantastic improvisers who play a large role in bringing the human experience to the foreground. Improvisation and spontaneity become the building blocks for a music that is inherently unyielding. Creating the illusion of flexibility and freedom is an important goal in many of my electronic compositions. And in 2020, he composed Alice in the Pandemic, a digital opera with the White Snake Projects group, kind of fusing all of this together. So the work that's going to be featured today was composed in 2012. It's called Tuba-Tronics for tuba and real-time processing. It's a work for amplified solo tuba and live electronics. The electronics are triggered live using the software program Max MSP, and there are numbers on the score that correspond to laptop cues. The cues are triggered by pressing the space bar on the laptop keyboard, and additional effects are turned on and off by pressing the keys Q, W, E, and R. In general terms, the laptop performer, and in this rendition it's performed by my wife, Mary Elizabeth Thompson, so we could be in a COVID bubble doing this. The laptop performer follows the tuba player unless otherwise specified. The performer should keep a flexible tempo except for the section specified with electronics. Here is an image of the app. Here are some processed events that get triggered by these keys that is up to the laptop performer. And then you type in a cue or have a current cue, and the cues are all in the score, so you follow the performer in the score, and we had the mic line and the mod level pretty high in the mix because I wanted to get all that good processing in. In 2012, here's a program from 2012, I premiered Sosa's A Well-Organized Disaster, which was originally for trombone and percussion, and he didn't have anything for tuba, so I asked if he'd make a tuba version for me, which he did. It was composed in 2011, and so I gave the Mexican premiere of this work at the International Forum for New Music, Manuel Enriquez in Mexico City. I also did the Mexican premiere of Bloodstream there, and several American works, some with electronics, and 403 with my wife on piccolo by Glenn Smith. And then Jorge composed Tuba-Tronics, and it's pretty funny. Originally he said, well, the idea was he wanted to perform with me. He wanted to basically go drink a couple of beers, get on stage, feel real loose and improvise with me on the electronics. But he wasn't able to make it to this premiere performance that I gave in 2013, where I performed a work by my friend Mike Bratt for tuba and electronics, an unaccompanied piece by Svetlana Azarova from the Ukraine, and then, the premiere of Tubatronics and some other works, a piece for flute and tuba by Carlos Alejandro Ponzio de Leon. My wife performed the rest of the music, including another piece by Rodrigo Sigal. Tubatronics features a wealth of 20th century techniques. However, in his correspondence with me, the composer has referred to it as TT for short, and it is alliteratively interesting to note the prevalence of tritones in the work. And the composer as well tells me that he loves the music of revueltas, particularly Homenaje a Federico Garcia Lorca, which is also one of my favorite pieces. And there are many subtle revueltas-isms in the piece, both from Homenaje and from other pieces like Senza Maya, Janizio, and other things. So anyway, I'll now present an excerpt from Tubatronics. In conclusion, I hope you can see that there is just a wealth of great music from Mexico. I hope these artists were interesting to you. It's pretty amazing to think of someone like a Trent Reznor type of a person that I get to know that's writing for tuba. Someone so esteemed and scholarly like Rodrigo Sigal, and then my good friend Jorge Sosa, who's so down to earth, but also a young opera composer, receiving several big commissions and writing operas, and also on faculty at Molloy College. Just wonderful people and amazing individuals all writing for tuba. And we're so lucky to have these works, and I'd love for you to seek them out and try to perform them or introduce them to your students. Some further areas of research would be even more in-depth and thorough analyses than can be done right now of these works. I have recorded them, in these sort of live performances in my office in their entirety, even though I was only able to include excerpts. So I'll try to have links to the YouTube of the entire recordings. And then there's, of course, the actual recordings by Hector and Jesus of the works that you can find streaming online. Additionally, great works for unaccompanied tuba and piano, some that have been recorded and some haven't, by really other prominent Mexican composers, and even some incredibly prominent composers that are still working today, some, like I mentioned in the beginning, who have yet to compose for solo tuba. And if we could get more commissioning projects and more money for them to write for us, I think we would get even more great stuff. And I would love to see these composers featured here continue to write for tuba. And one glaring omission is female composers. I mentioned a few at the beginning, like Gabriela Ortiz and Marcela Rodriguez, and I mentioned my friend Paula in my initial proposal to Murtec last year. Paula was going to compose a piece for me, and then when it was time for VTech, I wasn't really able to check back in with her in time before I made my proposal. So I didn't want to say she was going to write for me when I didn't know her schedule, but I think the female voice in this is very strong, and we need to try to promote that as well in these artists. So again, thank you for your time. If you have any questions or any comments, we don't have a Q&A right now, but please look me up, and have a wonderful time. I can't wait to listen to all the great performances and watch some presentations at this great virtual conference. So thank you again. Have a great day.